Welcome to Falcons Drip, your go-to source for Falcons news and draft coverage. I'm Thon Ray, founder and voice of Falcons Drip. Welcome back to Falcons Drip Radio, everybody. I'm joined by my co-host, Kyle. Sorry we took a little break last week. You know, summer things, we were both swamped. But here we are today to go over a couple of roster moves we missed and just generally go over training camp and some of the battles that we had talked about in a previous episode.
So we got a few moves. We got 4 guys going to the injured, the IR, and then we have another couple being released and another couple being like 7 new guys signed. Mostly minor moves, a lot of XFL guys. So the first one we'll start off as a running back after the Caleb Huntley news of him going down. We signed Goodway Nguibuk. I don't know if I said that right, but he's played for the Lions and the Seahawks, is a good punt returner, and he'll be taking over Huntley's old number. And to make space for him, we released Matthew Trickett, a kicker out of Minnesota, and then Eddie Goldman retired again for the second time. And then we had released Dorian Etheridge. We signed Kimoko Toure. That's probably the biggest move we had. Had 5.5 sacks 1 year with the Colts. Overall, a quality guy who can make the back end of this roster and maybe be a rotational pass rusher for the Falcons. As well as Justin Ellis, who is a defensive tackle. We signed, so hopefully he can try to make a practice squad, if not back in roster spot. But overall, just back end guys filling up those back end spots with a bunch of injuries and a bunch of release news coming. Offensive lineman Ethan Greenridge going to the IR, Felipe Franks going to the IR, Chris Blair, former XFL receiver, going to the IR. Undrafted free agent rookie out of Rice, and Kene and Chukwu going to the IR as well. And then we signed 3 XFL guys and another guy that we had in camp. So defensive lineman Matthew Gotal, defensive lineman Kayvon Payton, and wide receiver Matthew Sexton. Those are the 3 XFL guys. And then the offensive lineman we had in training camp was Michael Minute. So a bunch of minor moves, but overall filling up our depth for the preseason.
Yeah, and a bunch of good moves. You know, like you said, a lot of depth. And I know Goodwin, right? That's his name.
Goodwin, yep. The running back.
I know Goodwin took Caleb Huntley's old number, but it really feels like he's more of a replacement for Avery Williamson. Punt returner, kick returner, a running back that, you know, could come in and see a couple looks on third down, and he's looked pretty decent so far in camp.
And I've also said on Instagram, I know we haven't been podcasting the past couple of days, I've said that he's brought in to compete for that 4th running back spot. I know there's a possibility Falcons take 4 running backs in the season, or maybe they just decide to take 3. But if they take 4, it looks like it's Carlos Washington's job to lose, the undrafted free agent they got. But they need to bring in competition, because if you're an undrafted rookie free agent, you should not just have an easy spot to the roster. So I like this move to bring in competition and maybe provide a pathway for maybe Carlos Washington ends up on the practice squad in a world where he ends up on the active roster, or maybe neither of them end up on the active roster. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
And the other thing too that you mentioned is, like, this really is, you know, it is his spot to lose, but at the same time, I agree that we could very well see just 3 running backs on the roster this year, because you also have Keith Smith, who's a fullback that can play running back in a pinch if you really needed him to. But I don't see any reason, unless you felt like Goodwin was going to provide more special teams value, I don't think there's any reason why you would bring on a fourth running back because between Algier, Huntley, or sorry, between Algier, Bijan, and CP, there's no reason why anyone else would see the field unless we were blowing a team out or getting crushed and we didn't want them to take those kinds of reps. In which case, you could put Keith Smith there too if you really had to.
I will mention this, that running back's a position that just takes an absolute beating. So the fact if you have more guys there, the better. But if they don't think a guy's good enough to be on the roster, they won't put him on the roster. And they have three quality guys to where if they think one guy's not good enough, they can just say, hey, we're not putting a guy there. We're just going to leave that spot empty.
And I think with how good our run blocking is, they would be fine to take a couple guys or even one guy and leave him on the practice squad. And if there's running back, there's a reason why, and we haven't talked about this, but the reason why running backs aren't getting paid is because there are so many running backs you can just take and throw in your practice squad or throw in the game and they'll perform typically. You could probably go and look at fantasy wise. There are probably so many guys that have scored 20, let's just say 15 or more points as a fantasy running back and then just disappear totally just for like 1 week. We'll have to see what they end up deciding to do. Let's jump into some of these camp battles a little bit. And due to injury, let's talk about left guard, right, which is probably one of the most important ones. Due to injury, it looks like Bergeron's kind of taking the left guard spot and running with it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long Hennessy is out. Arthur Smith has been saying day to day, so the sooner he can get back, the better. Because with him, it just provides so much depth. He can play basically both guard spots, center if you need him to. So that's why we absolutely need him back if we can. But it's no rush because it's early in training camp. Still got a lot of time to install stuff. We're just hoping he's fully ready to go for week 1.
And I do not expect him to come back and be placed in the starting spot. It's now before it was Hennessy's spot to lose. It felt like everyone was pushing for Bergeron, and now at this point, it's Bergeron's spot to lose. Hennessy would have to come in and really show up, and Bergeron would have to, make a lot of rookie mistakes for Hennessy to kind of take it back from him, I think.
Yeah, I also want to mention I know we're talking about some camp battles. So how about that number 5 receiver spot? So we've seen one of the candidates we were thinking could have an impact on that, and Chris Blair. People were saying he was like the Julio Jones of the XFL when we first signed him. So I want to get your take on who you think is that number 5 receiver. I know Darby's had a couple strong plays, with one of his plays getting posted. Nice catch versus, I think it was Cornell Armstrong or someone like that, in practice, and it looked really good and he looked really comfortable out there. So I'm very interested to see if he can possibly have a 3rd-year surge.
I think at this point, it's Darby's spot to lose. Darby's just literally in every single, and I know I keep saying that, but in every single, every time I'm reading through Twitter, and shout out to Kevin Knight and Daniel Flick and all of those guys for the amazing tweets that they put out for us, because it's awesome to read, and you feel like you don't miss out on anything. But it really feels like it's Darby's spot to lose. It feels like every day he's making big plays. And there's been times too where he's been wide open and he's been missed on a deep ball or something like that. And he looks good on special teams. I actually think at this point, just from what I've read, I haven't seen anything besides the highlights, and I read every quote, obviously. But I think Darby is pushing for the 4 spot and trying to push Kadero Hodge down to 5, which is a great problem to have. I think at this point, if it was the camp were to end right now, it would be Hodge and Darby. But that being said, Xavier Malone is also making a lot of plays. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of what ends up happening.
And I will mention one that you also have to mention in this conversation is Penny Hart. He's been that like number 5, number 6 receiver for Seattle a couple years. So he's got experience doing that, experience in a special teams type role. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets that spot. But right now it's those three guys are the most impressive and the ones you're like, ooh, who's gonna win that job? No one's particularly grabbed it by the horns and said, this is my job. But Darby's made a lot of plays from everything I've read and everything I've
Yeah.
seen. It seems like he's put himself in a great spot.
Yeah, I would say again, there's a lot of camp left, but I think at this point, Darby Darby has it. And I will also say too, and this is just how the NFL works. There are politics to it. If it's close, they're going to give it to the guy they drafted.
100%. You want to give it to the guys you draft because those are the guys you want in there. You scouted them. You said, this is our guy. This is the guy we want in our room. We like what we've seen from him. We like everything he has, whether it's physical stuff, whether it's mental side he brings. But I absolutely love what he's bringing right now, and hopefully he can make it. He definitely brings a quality mentality to them as he brings, um, I think, some fire and some passion to this team.
But I think too, like Penny Hart was the guy that they drafted, or if it was Xavier Malone that they had drafted, like as a GM or a coach, you want the guys you drafted because then you look better, right? Like if you go out and you keep your sixth round pick or fifth round pick, he's a sixth round pick, I believe. So you go out and keep your sixth round pick, it looks a lot and cut a UDFA or cut a guy who's off a different roster, it just looks better for you. So whether that's conscious or subconscious, that's how most people do it. That being said, I think even without all that, Frank Darby is making the most plays, and like you said too, he brings so much more than just his play to this team, and it shows. They want to keep him around.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. But with that being said, I just want to mention, I know this isn't camp battle related, but how about Mac Hollins? He's
Mm.
gotten absolutely jacked to the point where people are saying he's maybe one or two Big Macs away from becoming a tight end. And then you got his quote saying he doesn't like soft people and he doesn't even like people who eat with their hands.
No, he only
How
he
about that
doesn't
quote?
he doesn't like people that eat with the utensils.
Eat with utensils, that is.
Yeah, he eats with
That's
his
it. That's
hands.
it.
And I don't know if you saw this too. He also doesn't wear shoes unless if he goes out to dinner, he won't wear shoes unless he's going with other people because he doesn't want them to get kicked out.
That's hilarious. I think he's just got the fire to be a great player for this team, and I think he's from everything I've seen, he's proven he can be that quality number two if everything goes the way
He's perfect.
it could.
He's he's a perfect number two for this offense because we're a run team first. Then you've got Pitts. Then you've got London or one, however you want to do it. I think Pitts is going to be the guy, and then London. And then the third option in the receiving game is going to be Bijan. And then lastly, like you just need a guy who's going to be able to block well, which he is. And he's just a dog. He's just going to go out and do what the team needs. And he wants to win more than anything else. So I think he's just the perfect fit. And he's a matchup nightmare. He's so big, so strong, and he really does a great job tracking the ball on deep throws. So like you can't ask for anything more.
Yeah, I since we're mentioning tight ends and receivers, I gotta mention how stacked this tight end room is. So you got Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith, who's been a starting tight end, been
We didn't
signed
talk,
to contracts to be a
we didn't
starting tight end in the
we didn't
tight end
talk
number
about
one
Pruitt.
teams. Then you got Michael Pruitt, the touchdown machine for the Falcons in the receiving game last year. And you got John Fitzpatrick, who's an absolutely huge tight end, played for a national champion Georgia team the first year of their run, not the second year. He was hurt last year, so this will be his first year playing. He's 6'7", about 250. So he's absolutely huge, and he's made some plays during camp. So it'll be exciting to see if the
And
Falcons take four tight ends, and I think they will with the guys they have right now.
and he's a blocking tight end with that 6'7" wingspan. Yeah, and you also too you forgot to mention Parker Hesse.
Hmm.
I mean, Parker Hesse's no slouch either. He's a great move tight end who can play some fullback, and he does well after the catch. It's gonna be interesting. I would not be shocked if we had kept five tight ends, truthfully,
I
which is wild to say.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we will, but if we do, I wouldn't be surprised because the Falcons have so much depth. But I think right now he's Parker Hesse's one of those ones where he's just on the outside looking in, trying to crack the roster because of how much depth they have at the position.
I actually think it's Pruitt on the outside looking in.
Pruitt?
Yeah, which is
That's
a hot take.
surprising.
I know, but I think so. Like when you look at it, like Parker Hesse is more of a blocking tight end, and Fitzpatrick's more of a blocking tight end. Pitts, Jonnu Smith, and Pruitt are all like they're all like possession catching, wide receiver tight ends. So when you look at it that way, like you've got your Pitts and Jonnu Smith probably take the trump over Pruitt in that category. And then if you want somebody to block, it's Fitzpatrick and Hesse. So that's kind of I think, obviously Jonnu Smith and Kyle Pitts are on the roster. They're locks. And I think Pruitt, Hesse, and Fitzpatrick are all competing for the last two spots.
I would agree with that. But I had Pruitt as semi lock where you're like, okay, this guy's probably the number three. So I'm surprised to hear you say,
I
oh, this guy's not a lock for me. So
Yeah, I really think it's just what they bring to the table. I think that
mhm.
Arthur Smith values the blocking ability that Parker has and the versatility that he has because he can go into the backfield and play fullback. I just think he's definitely nowhere near as good as a receiver as Pruitt. Pruitt is, you know, the
Yeah, 10 times
Pruitt.
better.
Yeah, but on the other end of it, Parker Hesse is a 10 times better blocker.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
So it's
Um,
just going to be interesting. It's going to be, I think it's going to be whatever they feel like they need more. And I would not be shocked again. I would not be shocked if they cut five tight ends. And I would not be shocked if one of these guys also ended up on the practice squad as one of the people who can be on the practice squad and is older. Um, so
with that, should we talk about cornerbacks? So we
let's do
have
it.
we have
We
some battles there, and when we
okay.
had Jeff Okuda going down and getting carted off the field with an ankle injury, thankfully Arthur Smith came out and he said he expects him to be back early in the season. So
Mhm.
maybe he'll miss maybe a game or two,
Could be back
depending
though.
on how bad it is. But
Could be back as early as week one.
so we'll see. Maybe he misses a game, maybe he doesn't. But either way, we've seen Trey Flowers repping with the ones in his spot since he's been out. So
I was shocked.
I'm
I
excited to see who makes this roster, and that makes it even more interesting that they said, Trey Flowers, you're our number one outside corner behind him.
I was shocked. I did not think it was going to be him. Um,
Hmm.
I thought it was going to be Mike Hughes for sure. Let's talk. I mean, there's so much to talk about with these corners, and we talked about in the corner battle. Like they're competing for the nickel spot. We're competing for the third outside corner spot, right? It seems like Dee Alford has kind of been the guy. Not that he's a lock, but he's the guy right now and has been able to hold off as our starting nickelback. But Clark Phillips is looking awesome. Mike Hughes is making plays out there too. And like you said, it seems like Trey Flowers is the number three outside corner that we have. Also, too, some of our later round guys like Natrone Brooks has been making a lot of plays recently.
Yeah, so I think we keep six corners, and I want to get your thoughts on who that is. Obviously, you got Okuda, AJ Terrell, and then you'd probably have Dee Alford in there.
Yeah, Alford,
And
you
then
have to you have to
Clark
have
Phillips
Clark.
would be in there.
And obviously it's Trey Flowers if he's the second.
Yeah. So I wanted to see who you had as that sixth guy because it's interesting. Is it Cornell Armstrong? Is it a different guy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Mike Hughes. I don't know for sure. I think it's going to be Mike Hughes, and I would not be shocked then if we turn around and say, okay, Darren Hall, um, Trone Brooks, Cornell Armstrong, like you guys, we're going to try and resign you guys to the practice squad. That being said, I could literally see all three of these guys being picked up onto another roster. Like this is the first time in a long time I felt like we've had some serious corner depth.
Yeah, I feel like some of these guys are good enough to be our bench guys are good enough to be starters on certain teams. Obviously not some teams because it's as a person who's going to be as non-biased as possible, I can say this cornerback room isn't the greatest. It isn't like the greatest in every spot, but it is good at the top end. Some of these guys could be starters on middle of the road teams, but they're not going to be starters on a good team with solid top end corners.
Yeah, like when you look at it, right? AJ Terrell is a one. He's a CB1. I think Jeff Okuda right now, um, or the way he's played in camp, he would be a cornerback two. You can't give him anything more than that. He has potential to also be a cornerback one. It's not there. Hopefully by the end of the season it will be. Um, Mike Hughes is a good cornerback three. Dee Alford is a good cornerback three. Trey Flowers is a good cornerback three, right? So we have three guys right there that are they're CB3s that could be a CB2 in a pinch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Darren Hall is a good CB4. Clark Phillips is another CB3, in my opinion. He's a great cornerback three. Natrone Brooks is a good cornerback four. Cornell Armstrong, another good cornerback four. So like we have so much depth there. That I'm really, I'm really happy with it. And then less like losing Akuda would hurt. Losing AJ Terrell would really hurt. But we have so much depth that it wouldn't kill us like it has in the past.
100%. I'm loving how this group has turned out, especially the defensive backs. And I also, while we're talking about defense, I need to talk about Troy Anderson. He's looked great out there. There's been a couple times he's been beat by Bijan, which is understandable. Bijan is going to be the highest paid running back in the league in his first season,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane. That just shows you how poorly running backs are paid. Um, but Bijan is considered maybe the best player in the draft. The only
Yeah.
reason he seemed to fall was because he was a running back, not like a receiver. If he was a receiver, he'd be top five in the
I
draft.
he is, and I've said this for a long time. He's literally Devo Samuel. Like
And if
him,
you're getting Devo Samuel,
yeah.
you're 100% down for that, and you're like, okay, we're gonna be great. We're a playoff team.
Yeah, it would be it. I'm shocked too, like just going back to the draft, that JSN fell to 20. And I think if JSN had played last year, he wouldn't have fallen to 20. I think we would have been talking about him as a top five guy. And I think Bijan also would have been talked about as a top five guy if he wasn't considered a running back.
A
Like
hundred percent.
if you were to
But
say if you were to say, all right, Bijan, you're a slot receiver, like he's a stud.
mhm. He's he can play like at least three positions on the offense, whether you're talking multiple receiver spots or the
Mm-hmm.
running back position, and he would be a top 10 pick in almost every one, if
Yeah,
not every spot.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, So let's because we got to talk a little bit too about the safety battle that we've gone into. Jalen
Mhm.
Hawkins now, well, until today, Jesse Bates had two interceptions today, but Jalen Hawkins had was leading for a long time in camp with two picks, and he's looked good. Bates has looked good. Richie Grant, I think he has. I can't remember if he has one or if he might not have any interceptions, but he has a ton of pass breakups. The safety battle, like it's a lock, right? Hawkins, we've talked about it, right? Hawkins, Grant, and Bates are all locks to make the team. Hawkins is pushing Grant, but I think Grant has the lead at the moment right now.
100%. I think the only reason Grant is leading is because Grant gives you a different skill set to Bates. And I think Jalen Hawkins is a guy who's going to kind of rotate in behind Bates when he comes out for a couple plays per game.
I I think you can kind of do either. I think that's what makes Jalen Hawkins a great third safety. Is I think he's good in the box, he's good back deep, where and Bates is too. Bates is could do either one. Where Richie Grant really thrives as being like your box safety, like down in the line of scrimmage, in the box type guy.
Hmm.
and we're not gonna hopefully we're not gonna ask him to be playing too much deep safety, at least not single high. So love it. There is a world, this right now. Grant it has it, but Hawkins is pushing him hard.
I do think Hawkins fits a little better as a like center field type safety, but I think he can do a little bit of both. He has a little bit more versatility than any other safety in here.
Besides,
Then you got
besides Jesse
Helms.
Bates, besides Jesse Bates,
Yeah, Bates can play basically
yeah,
anywhere. Bates could
he's
probably be
not
a
a
corner if he wanted to.
yeah, he's not a unicorn, but like Pitts is, but he's as close as you can get at safety without being a total unicorn.
Mm,
Not being like a Isaiah Simmons type player.
yeah, not quite. He could probably drop down and play like a corner type stuff for a couple snaps per game, but
Yeah,
he wouldn't be able to hold up there.
yeah. But as far as
Like
safety
a
goes, he's
CB3
pretty.
or something.
Yeah, but as far as the safety goes, he could do either. He could play. Yeah, you're right. He could play nickel, strong, or free safety really well.
Hmm.
Um,
I also love DeMarco Hellams. He's been making
yeah.
some plays. I've seen his name mentioned a lot.
Mhm.
Hard hitting safety from Bama. The only thing I worry about is it can he improve his coverage a little bit so he doesn't get burnt like toast all the time.
Mm. And also too, Micah Abernathy. I've seen his name popping up a lot as well. So we'll have
That's an interesting one. I believe he's been on the Falcons roster for a couple years now.
I think just one. I think he's maybe
Is this
practice
his first
squad or
year?
they signed him late.
Maybe they signed him late last year, so I might have seen
Yeah.
his name for a little while. Because it seems like he's been there for a minute. Now you got me curious.
So he went undrafted in 2019. In 2019, he was on the Vikings, the Bucks, and the Colts. In 2020, he played for the Dallas Renegades. 2022, he played for the Houston Gamblers, got brought up to the Packers in 2022, and then Um, Atlanta signed him at the end of the year to the practice
Okay,
squad,
that's
off
why
the
it looks
practice
like
squad.
he's been here for a year.
Yeah, we signed him in like the end of December, I think, beginning of January. Um, so, anyways, he's made a couple plays, but I do think going back to what you were talking about, I do think this is Helen's spot to lose. I think he is right now the fourth safety. Um, although I say that, and Lucas Dennis made a great play today. On
Another
the ball.
XFL guy.
Yeah. So
Um,
that'll be really interesting. And Clifford Chapman, I think, also made a couple nice plays. Um, the UTSA corner slash safety, the guy who's 6'5". I think, and we talked about him a lot. I
I think
think
he's a practice squad.
I do too. I think he's like his potential is sky high, but he's just not there yet. So I think I agree. I think he would be a guy you put on the practice squad and kind of see how he develops.
The only thing I'm worried about is if the Falcons get him on the practice squad and then another team says, "Oh, that guy looks like a great player," and sees like his size, his speed, his combination of traits and goes, "Okay, we're just going to sign him to the active roster so we can have him and develop him for later."
I
So
would
that's the one thing that worries me.
That's what I would do if I was a team like the Cardinals, who are like they're going to be horrible this year. Like that's the kind of guy. That's what exactly what I would be doing. Is the guys on your roster aren't going to be great, and that towards the end of the year, middle of the year, I would just start plucking guys off of practice squads that look like they have some sort of potential and see what happens.
100%. And with the Falcons how good their team looks this year, they're going to have a couple guys who they tried to cut and maybe resign that are going to get plucked to other rosters.
Yeah.
And I also want to mention former Falcons receiver Marvin Hall. He just announced his retirement recently. So after spending several years with the Falcons as like a wide receiver four, Marvin Hall's career comes to an end.
Yep. Yep. He was a solid undrafted player for us.
Any other pieces of information you want to talk about, or do you think we hit on everything?
I think just talking, I know it's kind of been a battle for our backup linebacker spot. It kind of sounds like if we don't keep five inside backers, it's going to be Ellis Anderson, Michael Walker, who's been all over the field, by the way. Nate Landman is right now the fourth guy, but Tay Davis is right on his heels, pushing him. And if we do end up keeping five, Tay Davis would be the fifth as of right now. Um, but there's a world by the end of this camp where he takes Landman's spot. Um, our interior defensive line looks great. Even with Calais Campbell not there, everybody's everybody's making plays. Everybody's eating, including Justin Ellis, Timmy Horn, some of the guys who you know aren't going to play as much because you got Grady and Anyamata there. But we didn't even talk about Zach Harrison.
I
Zach
was
Harrison,
about to bring him up.
like Zach.
I completely forgot about him for a second. So, Zach Harrison, he's made some plays during camp. I've seen some fans being like, Zach Harrison versus the second team defense edits where they're putting memes over him. So, um,
Second
shout
team
out
off.
to all the fans putting stuff out and
Yeah.
being excited about Zach Harrison. I'm excited for what he can do, but I think he's more so of a guy you'd look for to do big things in the second year. But it's a good sign that he's already starting to do some good things, even if it's just versus the second team.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what you're looking for, and this is what you want to see, right? Like we're not sitting here saying, oh, Zach Harrison should be starting. Zach Harrison's the next Calais Campbell. Zach Harrison's the next Aaron Donald. Whatever. This is what you want to see. He's dominating the second team. That means it's there. What he has is there. He can play in this league, even if it's just as a rotational guy. But I really do believe he will work his way into being a very good player for us.
100%. And if he can be that, that's huge for the Falcons who haven't had that pass rushing prowess in years, with most years not even getting over 25 sacks.
Yeah. Um, I would say too, the only other thing I really want to touch on is kind of the edge rusher position besides Zach Harrison, right? Zach Harrison's kind of a hand in the dirt kind of guy, and we've got a couple guys like Bud Dupree, Arnold Ebiketie, um, D'Angelo Malone, who all kind of look they all look good, and they're all being used in different ways. Um, Arnold Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone are both also being used as stand-up linebackers at times, as like outside backers, inside backers types at times. So I don't know. I think it looks good.
I think that's a good way to use them. That way, teams can kind of be caught off guard, and maybe Ebiketie has a better chance of getting to the quarterback because teams have to prepare for him to drop back and can't just hone in on him rushing the quarterback every time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I think that's mostly it. I'm sure there's stuff that we're forgetting. It does look like kind of like we talked about a little bit because we talked about Bijan that Tyler Algier. It seems like Tyler Algier is the quote unquote starting running back, but we're gonna get Bijan in all sorts of ways and could end up out touching. Uh, he could end up out touching Algier, but he's not just going away.
100%. And we also have to mention Cordero Patterson. We expect the Falcons to take five wide receivers. And if the Falcons do take five wide receivers, if they wanted to go and utilize more wide receivers, maybe they put Cordell out there in the slot for some plays. Um,
They really could. Like, let's say, like, if we talk about, and I'll just say this really quickly because I know we don't want to keep you guys too long, but like, we could, in a world, there's a world we keep five tight ends and four receivers because you end up with, Kyle Pitts and Patterson and Bijan, who all can play wide receiver. So
hundred percent.
it's going to be, we got a lot of mixing matching to do, and I look forward to seeing how it kind of goes.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And with that, you want to wrap it up?
Absolutely. So, guys, today we just kind of went over some of the moves. We talked about some of the stuff going on in training camp, some of the camp battles that we see going on. A lot of good stuff coming. I can't wait for the first preseason game. I watch every single play of the preseason. Well, the Falcons preseason, and I'm excited to see kind of what we got. And one last thing too is I know everyone's down on Desmond Ritter because whatever, guys, it's the preseason. They're supposed to try things. They're supposed to push the ball. They're supposed to make mistakes. This is the time to do it. Don't read into it too much.
Yep, 100%. And with that, we're gonna hop out and rise up, y'all, and go Falcons.
Again, this is Thon Ray. You guys can follow us at Falcons_drip on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Please make sure you subscribe, follow, whatever you need to do to get the alert for our next episode. If you guys enjoyed today, please leave us a review. It always helps us grow. Until then, see you next time. Rise up.